When Dougie Watkin calls his sheep, sometimes they're in England and sometimes they're in Scotland. Dougie owns 70 acres of land near Berwick in England, but just over the River Tweed he rents 700 acres in Scotland. Little surprise that for Dougie, Scottish independence would not only be a logistical, but also an emotional headache. Yet because he lives in England, he won't be able to vote in the upcoming referendum.
The great worry is the uncertainty. No matter what happens now with the referendum, it is so close that there are going to be knock-on effects from it. But if Scotland did go independent, I don't believe anybody that tells me what would happen, because I don't believe anybody really knows. The two countries are so interlinked and have been for so long, and it really is this uncertainty of what the future holds.
Dougie lives in what is known as the Borders, an area which runs along the boundary line of Scotland and England. It's an area symbolic of Scotland's more than 300-year-old union with the United Kingdom, where families and businesses have been intertwined for decades. But it's a union not everyone is in favor of, and one which will be put to the test when Scotland votes on independence on the 18th of September. But can Scotland make it on its own, or is it better off inside the United Kingdom? It's a highly emotional debate which has divided people on both sides of the border. Heather Anderson runs an organic farm on the Scottish side of the border. She claims Scotland is self-sufficient with resources such as oil and renewable energy.
We'll come in a minute.
Heather also downplays fears of Scotland's ties with the European Union.
Scotland, once it votes yes on the 18th of September, will have 18 months to negotiate its continued membership of the European Union. We've been in there for 40 years, we comply with all the treaties, we export, we're 1,500% self-sufficient in fish. I think Spain would be sorry if we left. We're 1,500% self-sufficient in lamb, which we sell to France. We've got a 13 billion food export business. We are wanting to be active players in the European Union. We're completely focused on remaining a member. We don't want to leave and we don't want to be taken out without our control. So we have to vote yes to make sure that happens.
Just over the English border in Berwick-upon-Tweed, Bill Parkin is worried. His company employs both Scottish and English engineers, and his business operates on both sides of the border. For him, independence could mean new taxes, new regulations, new borders, but especially, if not a new currency, one that will be different.
Although they will still have the pound, or they can still have the pound, it'll be what will that pound be worth elsewhere. They can have with any currency they want, but what will the worth be to the rest of the world or to the rest of the UK? And it'll be outside factors that will determine that. And I think the union, the way it is, it's worked well for 300 years plus, and if it's not broken, why try and change it,
Crossing back over the border into Scotland, this is the town of Eyemouth. James Cook runs a seafood company which exports to England and to the EU. For James, Scottish independence is a chance to show Europe and the rest of the world that Scottish products can stand on their own. And he's not worried about the currency. He's voting yes.
For us personally, we're a big exporter of products to the European market, and we're a strong advocate of the European community. So we could equally well with the euro or the pound, but we still feel that I think they're missing a point here. The pound is a joint asset. It's owned equally by all parts of the United Kingdom, and to suddenly have the audacity to say that you won't be able to use it, I think is a bit naive, and I think they're using it as a big negative in the campaign to try and scare everybody.
Jim Fullerton is Scottish and his wife Alison is English. They've been living in the Borders for over 40 years. They support the Better Together campaign to keep Scotland inside the United Kingdom. For Jim, who's a farmer and businessman, an independent Scotland would face huge obstacles.
It won't be a currency zone because we've already been told that the rest of the UK, it's Wales, England and Northern Ireland, are not going to allow Scotland to have the Bank of England as a lender of last resort. So we'll be like Panama. We'll use the pound without any control over interest rates and indeed our policy of government. It's the trouble with the Yes campaign, it is too simplistic for words and deals with a lot of euphoria and emotion and optimism without the practical realities of separating Scotland into a different country.
And from a technical point of view, a country joining the EU has to have a central bank. That, as Jim has said, is not the case. Now, we don't have a central bank, we don't have a separate currency, therefore we cannot apply to join the EU, according to the commissioners who were writing in the press last week. You know, Alex Salmond will tell you, oh, well, we're different because we're actually in the EU already. Well, sorry, but we're not in the EU. The United Kingdom is in the EU, and Scotland as a separate country has no status in the EU.
EU membership, the currency, jobs, education, the health system, these are just some of the many issues being debated by both yes and no supporters. But for this man who's been campaigning for 2 years for a yes vote, in the end it's not a vote against the English, it's a vote for democracy and sovereignty.
It's a bit funny. Either you believe in the people of Scotland and their innate ability, like any other country in the world, to govern themselves. You know, the best people to make choices about Scotland are the people that live and work here. With all due respect to Westminster and the elite, the establishment at Westminster, and that's what it's about as much as anything else. It's a ruling elite that has been there for hundreds of years and they want to keep power. If I may finish with one thing, and I think it's a very powerful thing. On the 18th of September, between the hours of 7 a.m. in the morning and 10 p.m. at night, the people of Scotland will hold sovereignty in their hands. At 1 minute past 10, when the polls close, we'll have made a decision to keep it or to hand it back to someone else again.
Making the decision to keep or break a union that has existed for over 3 centuries. Regardless of the outcome, there's a feeling on both sides of the border that things will never be quite the same, that this referendum will affect everyone except maybe the sheep.
It is always difficult when you're meant to be doing sheep movement forms when they move between areas. At present, England and Scotland are different regions rather than different countries, and you need to complete a movement form to move between regions. But no matter how hard I've tried, those sheep refuse to fill in a form when they go over there. They just go.